The worst part about watching your marriage end isn't the screaming or the tears. It's the silence that follows, thick as concrete, when you realize the woman you loved has become a stranger who despises everything about you. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Eli Rourke, 38 years old, and I fix classic cars for a living. My hands are permanently stained with motor oil, my back aches from hunching over engines, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a good life. My wife Vanessa is a corporate attorney at Markham & Associates, the kind of woman who wears $1,000 suits and speaks in legal jargon even when asking me to pass the salt. We used to laugh together. We used to talk about having kids, buying a bigger house, maybe taking that trip to Ireland we'd been planning for 3 years. Now she looks at me like I'm something she stepped in. The beginning of the end started with her sister's wedding last spring. Vanessa's younger sister Claire was marrying some hedge fund prince named Bradley, and the whole affair was designed to showcase just how much money the happy couple had to burn. 300 guests, ice sculptures, a live orchestra, and enough flowers to stock a funeral home for a month. I wore my best suit, the navy one Vanessa had picked out for me 2 Christmases ago. She wore a silver dress that probably cost more than I make in a week, and she looked stunning. For a moment, watching her adjust her earrings in our bedroom mirror, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her. "You look beautiful," I told her, meaning it. She barely glanced at me. "We need to leave in 10 minutes. Try not to embarrass me tonight, okay?" That should have been my first warning. The wedding was everything you'd expect from people with more money than sense. The venue was some historic mansion outside the city, complete with manicured gardens and a staff of servers in white gloves. I felt out of place the moment we walked in, surrounded by lawyers and investment bankers and their perfectly polished wives. Vanessa transformed the instant we entered the reception hall. She became animated, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, air-kissing people she'd called idiots in the car ride over. I watched her work the room like a politician, and I realized I was just an accessory she'd rather leave at home. "Eli, right?" A voice behind me belonged to Bradley's brother, Dean. He was younger than me by maybe 5 years, with the kind of soft features that come from never having worked a day of manual labor. "You're the mechanic." The way he said it made my profession sound like a disease. "I restore classic cars," I corrected. "Just finished a 1967 Mustang Fastback. Beautiful machine." Dean smiled the way you'd smile at a child showing you a crayon drawing. "That's nice. Must be simple work. Relaxing, I imagine." I felt my jaw tighten. "It requires skill, attention to detail, problem-solving. Every car tells a story." "I'm sure it does." Dean was already looking past me, scanning the room for someone more interesting to talk to. "Well, enjoy the party." He walked away without another word, leaving me standing by the bar with a half-empty beer and a growing sense that I didn't belong here. I looked around for Vanessa and found her deep in conversation with a group of her colleagues, gesturing animatedly as she told some story that had them all laughing. I approached the group, thinking I might join the conversation. As I got closer, I caught the tail end of what Vanessa was saying. So I told him, "Honey, just because you can fix an engine doesn't mean you understand how the real world works." He still thinks we can afford that house in Riverside. Sweet, really, but completely unrealistic. The group laughed, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She was talking about me, about our private conversations, our dreams, making them sound foolish for the entertainment of her friends. "Vanessa," I said, stepping into the circle. She turned, and for just a second I saw something like panic flash across her face. Then she smiled, the same bright, empty smile she'd been wearing all evening. "There you are. Everyone, this is my husband, Eli. Eli, you remember Lily and David from the firm. And this is Julian Markham, our senior partner." Julian Markham was probably 45, silver-haired and expensive-looking in the way that comes from generations of money. He shook my hand with the grip of someone who'd never done physical labor, but his smile seemed genuine enough. "Pleasure to meet you, Eli. Vanessa speaks of you often." I wondered what version of me she'd been describing. "All good things, I hope." "Of course," Julian said, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. "She tells me you work with your hands. Admirable. We need people who can actually fix things." It was meant to be a compliment, but it felt like being patted on the head. I glanced at Vanessa, hoping for some sign of support, but she was studying her wine glass like it contained the secrets of the universe. "What Eli does is actually quite specialized," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "He has his own shop and everything." "His own shop?" Julian nodded approvingly. "Entrepreneurial spirit. I respect that." The conversation moved on to other topics, cases the lawyers were working on, office politics, people I didn't know. I stood there for another few minutes, feeling increasingly invisible, before excusing myself to find the bathroom. I was washing my hands when Dean appeared beside me at the sinks. "Rough crowd for you, I imagine," he said, checking his reflection in the mirror. "All those big words and complicated ideas." I dried my hands slowly, keeping my voice level. "I do fine. I'm sure you do." Dean adjusted his tie. "Must be hard, though, being married to someone so accomplished. Vanessa's going places, you know. Big places. I just hope she doesn't feel held back." I turned to face him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Dean shrugged. "Nothing, really. Just that successful women sometimes outgrow their circumstances. It's natural. Evolution." He left me standing there, hands clenched into fists, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked tired, older than my 38 years. My suit was nice enough, but it didn't fit quite right. And next to all these polished professionals, I felt like a fraud. When I returned to the reception, Vanessa was dancing with Julian Markham. They moved well together, her silver dress catching the light as he spun her around the dance floor. They were laughing about something, their heads close together, and watching them, I felt like an intruder at my own wife's life. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and stilted conversations. I tried to engage with Vanessa's colleagues, but every topic seemed designed to exclude me. They talked about cases and clients, about vacations to places I'd never been, about restaurants that charged more for one meal than I spent on groceries in a week. On the drive home, Vanessa was quiet, staring out the passenger window at the dark countryside rolling past. "Nice wedding," I said, trying to break the silence. "Mm-hmm." Your sister looked happy. "Oh, she did?" I waited for more, but Vanessa seemed lost in thought. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Did you have to tell them about the house in Riverside?" She turned to look at me, her expression unreadable in the dim light from the dashboard. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean, making it sound like some impossible dream, like I'm an idiot for thinking we could afford it." Vanessa sighed. "Eli, we've been through this. The house is $800,000. We don't have that kind of money." "We could get a loan. I've been looking at the numbers." "You've been looking at the numbers." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Eli, you balance a checkbook. I negotiate million-dollar contracts. I think I have a better grasp of our financial situation." The words hit me like a slap. "So that's it? My opinion doesn't matter because I work with my hands instead of pushing papers around?" "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." We drove the rest of the way home in silence, and when we got to our house, our perfectly adequate middle-class house that suddenly felt like a prison, Vanessa went straight upstairs without saying goodnight. I sat in my den for a long time that night, nursing a whiskey and thinking about Dean's words. Evolution. Outgrowing circumstances. I wondered if that's what was happening to us. If Vanessa was evolving beyond me like some natural law I was powerless to stop. That was the night I first started to suspect that my marriage was over. I just didn't know yet how ugly the ending would be. The months after Claire's wedding were like watching a slow-motion car crash. Vanessa grew more distant, more critical, more likely to find fault with everything I did. She started working later, attending more networking events, and spending her weekends at the office instead of home with me. I tried to bridge the gap. I really did. I planned date nights that she canceled, suggested weekend trips that she dismissed as impractical, even looked into taking some business courses at the community college, thinking maybe if I understood her world better, we could find common ground again. "You want to take accounting classes?" she said when I mentioned it over dinner one night in July. "Eli, you're 38 years old. Don't you think it's a little late to be reinventing yourself?" "It's never too late to learn something new." "But why? You have a trade. You're good at it. Why try to be something you're not?" The way she said it made me feel like she was putting me in a box, labeling me and filing me away under limited potential. I set down my fork and looked at her across our dining room table. "Maybe because I want to understand the things that matter to you. Maybe because I want us to have something to talk about besides the weather and what's for dinner." Vanessa's expression softened slightly. For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her. Then she reached across the table and patted my hand like I was a child who'd said something cute but ultimately meaningless. "You're sweet, Eli, but we don't need to be the same person to be married. You do your thing, I'll do mine. It works." Except it didn't work. Not anymore. The breaking point came in August, at a barbecue hosted by my oldest friend Tom Bradley. Tom and I had known each other since high school, back when we were both more interested in cars than careers. He'd ended up in construction, running his own company now, and he'd married his college girlfriend Lisa right after graduation. They had 2 kids, a nice house in the suburbs, and the kind of easy, comfortable relationship that Vanessa and I used to have. "You two need to come around more often," Lisa said as we stood on their back deck, watching Tom flip burgers on the grill. "We hardly see you anymore." "Vanessa's been busy with work," I said, which was true enough. She was standing by the pool, talking to Tom's brother-in-law about some legal case, looking perfectly at ease in her designer jeans and silk blouse. "She's doing well for herself," Lisa observed. "Tom says she's up for partners soon." "That's the plan." Lisa studied my face. "How do you feel about that?" It was a simple question, but it caught me off guard. How did I feel about my wife's success? I should have been proud, supportive, happy for her achievements. Instead, I felt like I was being left behind, like her success was highlighting all my failures. "I'm proud of her," I said, which was partially true. "But—" Lisa had always been perceptive. She could read people the way I could read engine problems, seeing the symptoms others missed. "But nothing. She's worked hard for this." Lisa nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. Before she could probe further, Tom called us over to eat. Dinner was pleasant enough. Tom and Lisa's kids, 8 and 10, chattered about school and soccer and video games. The other guests were a mix of Tom's construction crew and Lisa's teacher friends, blue-collar people who talked about real things, mortgage payments, and Little League games and weekend projects. I was relaxing for the first time in weeks when Dean appeared. I hadn't seen him since the wedding, but apparently he and Tom's brother-in-law worked for the same investment firm. He looked exactly the same, soft, expensive, and vaguely condescending. "Eli, good to see you again." Dean settled into the chair across from me, a beer in one hand and a plate of food in the other. "How's the car business?" "Can't complain. Just finished restoring a 1969 Camaro SS. Beautiful machine." "I'm sure it is." Dean took a bite of his burger. "Must be satisfying work. Very tangible. You can see what you've accomplished at the end of the day." There was that tone again, like he was talking to someone's slow nephew. "It has its rewards." "I imagine it does. Simple pleasures, right? Not like what Vanessa does. All that pressure, all those complex negotiations. I don't know how she handles it." I glanced over at Vanessa, who was still deep in conversation with the lawyer crowd that had somehow formed at the other end of the table. She was animated, gesturing with her wine glass as she made some point that had everyone nodding appreciatively. "She's good at what she does," I said. "Oh, she's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Julian Markham thinks the world of her. Says she's the most naturally gifted attorney he's worked with in 20 years. Julian Markham. I'd been hearing that name a lot lately. Vanessa mentioned him constantly. Julian thinks this, Julian says that. Julian believes the firm should expand into mergers and acquisitions. "You know Julian well?" I asked. Dean smiled. "We went to Harvard together. Brilliant man. Successful, sophisticated, knows how to appreciate the finer things in life. He and Vanessa make quite a team at the firm." Something in the way he said it made my stomach tighten. "They work well together." "Oh, it's more than that. They connect, you know? Intellectually, professionally. They understand each other in a way that's rare in business relationships." Dean was watching me carefully as he spoke, like a scientist observing a lab rat. I had the distinct impression that every word was calculated, designed to provoke a reaction. "Vanessa's always been good at connecting with people," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Some people more than others, I imagine." Dean finished his beer and set the bottle down with a small clink. "It must be challenging, being married to someone who operates on such a different level. All those late nights, all those business dinners and networking events. Easy to feel left out." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the deck. "I'm going to get another beer. Excuse me." I walked into Tom's kitchen, my hands shaking slightly as I opened the refrigerator. What was Dean trying to tell me? That Vanessa was having an affair? That she was too good for me? Or was I being paranoid, reading malice into innocent observations? "You okay, man?" Tom had followed me inside, concern written across his weathered face. We'd been friends for over 20 years, and he could read my moods as well as Lisa could. "Fine. Just needed a minute." Tom closed the kitchen door behind him, shutting out the noise from the deck. "What's going on, Eli? You've been weird all night." I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. "How do you know when your marriage is over?" The question hung in the air between us. Tom was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd said. "Jesus, Eli, are things that bad?" "I don't know. Maybe." She looks at me like I'm some kind of disappointment, like she's embarrassed to be married to me. "That's crazy. Vanessa loves you." Does she? When's the last time you saw her look at me like she loves me? When's the last time you saw us have a real conversation that wasn't about schedules or bills or whose turn it is to take out the trash? Tom didn't have an answer for that, which was answer enough. Maybe you two need counseling, he said finally. Work through whatever this is. You can't counsel someone into loving you, Tom. Either they do or they don't. We stood there in his kitchen, two middle-aged men confronting the possibility that the things we'd built our lives around might not be as solid as we'd thought. What are you going to do? Tom asked. I don't know yet. But even as I said it, I could feel something hardening inside me, a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. If Vanessa wanted to treat me like I was beneath her, if she wanted to humiliate me in front of her colleagues and make me feel small in my own life, then maybe it was time to remind her exactly who she was dealing with. I'd spent 6 months trying to save our marriage, bending over backward to accommodate her ambitions and her changing priorities. Maybe it was time to stop bending and start pushing back. When we got home that night, Vanessa was unusually talkative. That was fun, she said, kicking off her heels in the entryway. I didn't realize Tom's brother-in-law was such an interesting guy. We had a great conversation about intellectual property law. I'm sure you did. She looked at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just that you seemed to enjoy yourself more talking to him than you did talking to me. Vanessa sighed. Eli, we've been married for 8 years. We don't need to be attached at the hip at parties. No, but it might be nice if you acknowledged my existence once in a while. You're being dramatic. Am I? When's the last time you introduced me as your husband instead of just Eli? When's the last time you seemed proud to be with me instead of embarrassed? Vanessa stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. A decision being made. You want to know the truth, Eli? Sometimes I am embarrassed. Not of you, exactly, but of this. Of us. Of the fact that I'm 35 years old and still living like I'm 25. Her words hit me like a physical blow. What does that mean? It means I want more. I want to travel, to buy nice things, to live in a house that doesn't have a broken garage door and a lawnmower in the living room. I want to go to parties where people talk about ideas instead of sports scores and gas prices. The lawnmower was there for one day while I fixed it. That's not the point, Eli. The point is that we want different things. You're content with this life, and that's fine. But I'm not. I can't be. We stared at each other across the entryway of our house, and I realized we were having the conversation I'd been dreading for months, the one where she finally said out loud what I'd been seeing in her eyes. So what do you want to do about it? I asked. Vanessa looked away. I don't know. I need time to think. But I could see in her face that she'd already made up her mind. She just didn't have the courage to say it yet. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Vanessa slept beside me, and I made a decision of my own. If she wanted to play games, if she wanted to make me feel small and expendable, then I'd show her exactly what she was giving up. I'd spent my whole adult life being the nice guy, the understanding husband, the man who bent over backward to keep everyone else happy. Maybe it was time to try a different approach. Maybe it was time to stop being so nice. September brought the kind of crisp autumn weather that usually made me optimistic about the future. This year, it just felt like everything was dying. Vanessa's time to think had stretched into weeks of cold politeness and separate bedrooms. She claimed the guest room was temporary, just until she figured things out, but her clothes had migrated there, along with her laptop, her books, and her attention. I threw myself into work, staying late at the shop, taking on more restoration projects than I could reasonably handle. My business partner, Ben Torres, had been my friend since I'd started the shop 5 years ago. He was 10 years younger than me, unmarried, and had the kind of easy charm that made customers trust him instantly. You're working too hard, man, he said one Thursday evening as I hunched over the engine of a 1970 Chevelle, trying to diagnose a timing issue. When's the last time you went home before 8? Home's not exactly welcoming these days. Ben set down his wrench and looked at me seriously. You want to talk about it? I'd been avoiding this conversation for weeks, but suddenly I was tired of carrying it alone. Vanessa wants a divorce. She hasn't said it yet, but that's where this is heading. Shit, Eli, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, happens to the best of us, right? Ben was quiet for a moment, then asked, What are you going to do? It was the same question Tom had asked, and I still didn't have a good answer. What do you do when the person you love decides you're not worth loving anymore? Survive it, I guess. Try to keep the house, the shop, start over. You sure that's what you want? To start over? I looked up from the engine, surprised by the question. What do you mean? I mean, Maybe this is your chance to stop being the victim. Vanessa's been treating you like garbage for months, making you feel like you're not good enough for her. Maybe it's time to remind her what she's losing. There was something in Ben's tone that caught my attention. What are you suggesting? Ben glanced around the shop, making sure we were alone, then pulled out his phone. You know I do some side work, right? Security systems, surveillance equipment. Mostly for businesses, but sometimes for individuals going through messy divorces. I felt a chill run down my spine. Ben, just hear me out. If Vanessa's planning to screw you over in a divorce, don't you want to know about it? Don't you want to protect yourself? I stared at the phone in his hand, knowing that whatever he was about to show me would change everything. What did you find? Ben swiped through several screens, then handed me the phone. On the display was a series of text messages between two contacts labeled only as V and J. The messages were recent, from just 3 days ago. J, missing you. Can't wait for this weekend. V, me too. Eli's working late again, perfect timing. J, your place or mine? V, mine. He never comes home before 9 anymore. J, I'll bring wine. The good stuff. V, you always do. That's why I love you. I read the messages twice, my hands shaking slightly. How did you get these? Vanessa's phone syncs to her laptop. Her laptop connects to your home Wi-Fi. Your home Wi-Fi. Ben shrugged. Let's just say technology makes privacy an illusion. The rationale part of my brain knew I should be angry about the invasion of privacy, should tell Ben to delete whatever surveillance program he'd installed. But the larger part of me, the part that had been feeling crazy and paranoid for months, felt vindicated. Julian Markham, I said. You know him? Her boss. I met him at her sister's wedding. I scrolled through more messages, seeing a pattern of intimate conversations going back weeks. How long has this been going on? Based on the message history, at least 2 months, probably longer. 2 months. While I'd been agonizing over our marriage, trying to figure out how to fix things, she'd been planning her exit strategy. While I'd been lying awake at night wondering what I'd done wrong, she'd been texting another man about wine and weekend rendezvous. There's more, Ben said gently. He showed me photos, nothing explicit, but clearly intimate. Vanessa and Julian at restaurants I couldn't afford, at art galleries and wine bars, looking like the sophisticated couple she'd always wanted to be part of. In every photo, she looked happier than I'd seen her in months. I'm sorry, man, Ben said. I know this sucks. I handed him back the phone, my mind racing. Can you print these? Already did. Ben walked over to his desk and pulled out a manila folder. Screenshots, message logs, photo timestamps, everything you need for a divorce attorney. I took the folder, feeling its weight in my hands. Evidence of betrayal, proof that my marriage had been over long before I'd realized it. But instead of feeling devastated, I felt something else, something cold and calculating. Ben, that surveillance program you mentioned, it's still running? Yeah, why? I want to know everything, every message, every call, every plan they make. Can you do that? Ben studied my face carefully. Eli, I know you're pissed, and you have every right to be. But be careful how you use this information. Revenge can get complicated fast. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for justice. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. What I wanted was to make Vanessa pay for every humiliation, every dismissive comment, every time she'd made me feel small and worthless. I wanted her to hurt the way she'd hurt me. I wanted revenge. That weekend, I knew Vanessa would be with Julian. She'd made up some story about a work retreat, said she'd be back Sunday evening. I used the time to go through our shared computer, our financial records, anything that might give me an advantage in the coming divorce. What I found was worse than I'd expected. Vanessa had been moving money. Small amounts at first, transfers to a separate account I'd never known about. Over the past 3 months, she'd moved nearly $15,000. Money from our joint savings, money we'd been putting away for the house in Riverside, money that was supposed to be our future together. She was planning to leave me, and she was taking everything she could on her way out. I sat in our home office, my home office now, I supposed, staring at bank statements and transfer records, and felt something inside me break, not my heart. That had been breaking slowly for months. This was something else, something harder and more essential. My faith in fairness, my belief that good people who played by the rules would be rewarded, my conviction that love mattered more than money or status or the approval of people like Dean and Julian Markham. All of that died in that moment, replaced by something colder and more pragmatic. If Vanessa wanted to play dirty, I'd play dirty too, but I'd play better. I spent the rest of the weekend planning. I called a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in complex asset division. I made copies of every financial document I could find, including the evidence of Vanessa's hidden account. I researched Julian Markham, learning about his divorce 2 years earlier, his reputation at the law firm, his expensive tastes and political connections. Most importantly, I started thinking like my opponent instead of like a victim. Vanessa came home Sunday evening looking refreshed and happy, with a glow that I hadn't seen in months. She was humming as she unpacked her overnight bag, and when she kissed my cheek in greeting, I could smell expensive cologne that wasn't mine. "How was the retreat?" I asked. "Productive. We covered a lot of ground on the Morrison case." She was a good liar. I had to give her that. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed her completely. "That's great. I'm glad you're enjoying work so much." Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. "Everything okay?" I smiled, the same empty smile she'd been giving me for months. "Everything's fine. Just tired. Long weekend." We went through the motions of a normal evening. Dinner, television, small talk about our respective days. But underneath the surface, we were both lying. Both pretending, both preparing for a war that neither of us had officially declared yet. That night, as Vanessa slept in the guest room, I lay in our empty bed and made a list of everything I was going to take from her. Her job, her reputation, her relationship with Julian, her sense of security. I was going to dismantle her life the same way she'd dismantled mine, slowly, carefully, and with surgical precision. She thought she was smarter than me, more sophisticated, better equipped to navigate the complexities of modern relationships. She thought I was just a simple mechanic who wouldn't know how to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The war was coming, and I intended to win. October arrived with the kind of bitter cold that cuts through your jacket and settles in your bones, perfect weather for the mood I was in. Ben's surveillance operation had become more sophisticated over the past few weeks. What started as simple message monitoring had evolved into a comprehensive intelligence gathering system. Vanessa's laptop, her phone, even her car's GPS system, everything fed information back to us. "She's getting sloppy," Ben observed, showing me the latest batch of screenshots. We were in his office after hours, the shop quiet except for the hum of the space heater in the corner. "Look at this." The messages between Vanessa and Julian had become increasingly explicit, not just emotionally, but logistically. They were planning a weekend trip to some resort in the mountains, discussing how to handle the hotel reservation, what lies to tell their respective social circles. "V. Told my husband I'm visiting my college roommate in Denver. He never questions my trips anymore." J. "Perfect. I've handled the resort reservation. Our presidential suite, champagne service, the works." V. "You spoil me." J. "You deserve to be spoiled. Unlike some people, I know how to appreciate a woman of your caliber." V. "Can't wait to be somewhere we don't have to hide." J. "Soon, darling. Very soon." I read the exchange twice, feeling that familiar cold anger settle in my chest. What does that mean? Soon we don't have to hide. Ben pulled up another screen. "I think they're planning to go public. Look at this." He showed me a series of emails between Julian and his divorce attorney, the same Patricia Chen I'd consulted, ironically. Julian was inquiring about the timeline for finalizing his previous divorce decree, asking about potential complications if he entered into a new relationship with a colleague. "He's making sure he's legally clear to date Vanessa publicly," Ben explained, "which means they're probably planning to announce their relationship soon. After she divorces me." That would be my guess. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. They had it all planned out. The affair, the divorce, the public relationship, probably even their future together. I was just an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved. "There's something else," Ben said, his tone more serious. "I've been monitoring Vanessa's work communications, and I found something interesting." He pulled up a new folder on his computer. Julian's been giving Vanessa insider information on cases, client strategies, things she shouldn't have access to as a junior associate. Look at these emails. The messages showed Julian sharing confidential information about ongoing negotiations, client financial data, strategic plans that were supposed to be restricted to senior partners only. Vanessa was using this information to impress other partners, to make herself look more insightful and prepared than she actually was. "This is career suicide if it comes out," I said. "For both of them. Julian could be disbarred for sharing confidential client information with unauthorized personnel. Vanessa could be fired and blacklisted for using insider information to advance her career." I stared at the screen, seeing opportunity where before I'd only seen betrayal. "Can you document all of this? Create a comprehensive file?" "Already working on it. But Eli, you need to be careful how you use this. If it comes out that we obtained this information illegally, it won't come out. Trust me." Ben looked at me with concern. "What are you planning?" "Justice," I said. "I'm planning justice." The next phase of my plan required patience and precise timing. I couldn't just dump everything I knew at once. That would look like the desperate act of a betrayed husband. I needed to be strategic, surgical, devastating. I started with Vanessa's sister, Claire. Claire had always liked me, even before she married into money. She was younger than Vanessa by 3 years, but she had a sharper instinct for people's motivations. More importantly, she was a gossip who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. I called her on a Wednesday afternoon, when I knew she'd be home from her yoga class, but before her husband Bradley got back from work. "Eli, what a surprise. How are you?" "I've been better, actually. That's kind of why I'm calling." "Oh no. Is everything okay? Is Vanessa all right?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Claire, can I ask you something in confidence?" "Of course." I could practically hear her settling in for a good conversation. Claire lived for drama, especially when it involved her older sister. "Has Vanessa said anything to you about our marriage, about problems we might be having?" There was a pause. "Why do you ask?" "Because she's been distant lately. Working late, going on business trips, and when I try to talk to her about it, she shuts down. I'm starting to wonder if there's something she's not telling me." "Eli." Claire's voice became more careful. "I don't want to get in the middle of anything." "You're not getting in the middle. I'm just trying to understand what's happening to my marriage." Another pause, longer this time. "She did mention that you two were having some difficulties. Nothing specific, just that you seemed to want different things." "Different things like what?" "I don't know. She said you were content with your life the way it is, but she wanted more. More excitement, more sophistication, more... I don't know how to put this nicely. More than I can give her. She didn't say that exactly. But that's what she meant." Claire sighed. "Eli, you know I think the world of you. You're a good man, and you've always treated Vanessa well. But she's always been ambitious, even when we were kids. She used to talk about living in New York, traveling to Europe, being part of something bigger than our little hometown. And now she thinks she's found that. What do you mean?" I let a note of pain creep into my voice. "I think she might be seeing someone else, Claire. Someone from work." "Oh, Eli. No, Vanessa wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't she? Think about it. The late nights, the business trips, the way she lights up when she talks about her job but barely looks at me anymore. I think she's having an affair." Claire was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet, but I'm starting to put the pieces together." "Who do you think it is?" "Her boss, Julian Markham. They spend a lot of time together, and she mentions him constantly. Plus, he's exactly the kind of man she's always been attracted to. Successful, sophisticated, wealthy." "Julian Markham." Claire repeated the name like she was testing how it sounded. "I think I met him at my wedding. Silver hair, expensive suit." "That's him?" "He seemed nice enough, but..." Claire trailed off. "But what?" "But he was paying a lot of attention to Vanessa that night. I remember thinking it was a little inappropriate, the way he kept asking her to dance." Perfect. I'd planted the seed, and Claire's own memory was already helping it grow. "I don't know what to do, Claire. If I'm right, if she is having an affair, then our marriage is over. But if I'm wrong, if I accuse her without proof, it might destroy what little we have left." "Oh, Eli, I'm so sorry. I had no idea things were this bad." "Neither did I, until recently. Look, can you do me a favor? Don't mention this conversation to Vanessa. Not yet. I need to figure out what's really going on before I confront her." "Of course. But Eli, if she is having an affair, you deserve better. You deserve someone who appreciates what a good man you are." "Thanks, Claire. That means a lot." I hung up the phone, satisfied with the first phase of my plan. Within 24 hours, Claire would be analyzing every interaction she'd ever witnessed between Vanessa and Julian, looking for signs she'd missed. Within a week, she'd be sharing her suspicions with her friends, her mother, probably even Bradley. The rumors would start small, just whispers among family and friends. But rumors have a way of growing, especially when they're true. Next, I called Tom Bradley. "Eli, hey, how are you holding up?" "Not great, actually. That's why I'm calling. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Shoot." "That night at your barbecue, when Dean was talking to me about Vanessa and her boss, did he say anything to you afterward? Anything about what he might know?" Tom was quiet for a moment. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think Vanessa is having an affair, and I think Dean knew about it when he was talking to me." "Shit, Eli, are you sure?" "Pretty sure. I've been watching her behavior, and all the signs are there. The question is, how many people already know about it? How long have I been the oblivious husband while everyone else was whispering behind my back? Man, I don't know. Dean didn't say anything specific to me, but... Tom hesitated. But what? But Lisa mentioned something afterward. She said Dean seemed to be stirring up trouble, like he was enjoying making you uncomfortable. What did she think he knew? She thought he was implying that Vanessa was too good for you, that she might be looking for someone more, I don't know, more on her level. Someone like Julian Markham. I guess. Look, Eli, even if that's true, even if she is having an affair, that doesn't mean... It means exactly what it sounds like, Tom. It means my marriage is over, and I need to start protecting myself. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. Stop being the nice guy and start fighting for what's mine. That night, I sat in my den with a legal pad and wrote out everything I knew, everything I suspected, and everything I planned to do about it. The list was longer than I'd expected and more detailed. Vanessa thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She thought her law degree and her sophisticated friends gave her an advantage in this game. She was about to learn that I'd been underestimated before, and it never ended well for the people who made that mistake. The war was escalating, and I was just getting started. November brought the first real snow of the season, and with it, the perfect opportunity to begin my counterattack. Vanessa's mountain weekend with Julian was scheduled for the second weekend of the month. She'd told me she was going to a legal conference in Denver, even showed me fake registration materials she'd printed out. The level of deception was almost impressive. I'll be back Sunday evening, she said Friday morning, loading her overnight bag into her car. The conference runs late, so don't wait up. Have a good time, I said, kissing her cheek like the oblivious husband she thought I was. Learn something useful. I always do. She drove away, and I watched from the window until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I went to work. The first part of my plan was simple: establish an alibi and gather evidence. Ben had helped me set up a small camera in Vanessa's car, hidden behind the rear-view mirror where she'd never think to look. The GPS tracker we'd installed months ago would document her route to the mountain resort, proving she'd lied about Denver. But I needed more than just evidence of deception. I needed leverage. I drove to Julian Markham's house, a sprawling colonial in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. I'd been there once before, months ago, when Vanessa had dragged me to a firm Christmas party. Even then, I'd been struck by the casual wealth on display: original artwork, expensive furniture, a wine cellar that probably cost more than my annual income. Julian's house sat on 2 acres of manicured lawn, surrounded by old oak trees and a stone wall that provided privacy from the street. Perfect for what I had in mind. I parked 3 blocks away and walked back, carrying a small duffel bag filled with supplies. The neighborhood was quiet on a Friday afternoon, most residents at work or away for the weekend. I'd timed this carefully. Julian's security system was expensive, but predictable. Rich people always made the same mistakes. They bought the most expensive system available, then used simple passwords and ignored basic security protocols. Ben had taught me how to spot the vulnerabilities. It took me 15 minutes to disable the system and gain entry through the back door. Once inside, I moved quickly and methodically through the house, photographing everything that might be useful later. Julian's home office was a treasure trove of information. His computer was password protected, but he'd made the classic mistake of writing his passwords on a piece of paper taped under his keyboard. Within minutes, I had access to his email accounts, his financial records, and his personal files. What I found was better than I'd hoped. Julian Markham wasn't just having an affair with my wife, he was having affairs with multiple women, including at least 2 other employees at his law firm. His computer contained explicit photos, intimate messages, and detailed records of his various romantic entanglements going back several years. More importantly, I found evidence of financial irregularities. Julian had been using firm resources for personal expenses, billing clients for work that was never performed, and skimming money from settlement accounts. The man was a walking ethics violation. I copied everything to a portable drive, then spent another hour planting evidence of my own. Nothing illegal, I wasn't stupid, but small items that would create confusion and paranoia later. A woman's earring that didn't belong to Vanessa, hidden in his bedroom. A business card from a private investigator left conspicuously on his desk. A printed email from a fictional whistleblower, warning him that his activities were being monitored. By the time I left Julian's house, I had enough ammunition to destroy his career and his reputation, but I wasn't ready to use it yet. The best revenge required patience and perfect timing. Phase 2 of my plan involved Vanessa's workplace. Markham and Associates occupied 3 floors of a downtown office building, all glass and chrome and intimidating corporate atmosphere. I'd been there several times over the years, usually for firm parties or the occasional lunch with Vanessa. Saturday evening, when the building would be mostly empty, I used Vanessa's access card to enter the office. She'd left it on our kitchen counter months ago, and I'd made a copy before returning it. Amazing how careless people became when they thought they were safe. The firm's computer network was more secure than Julian's home system, but it had the same fundamental weakness: human error. Vanessa had given me her login information years ago, back when we still trusted each other, and she'd never bothered to change it. I spent 3 hours in her office, copying files and documenting the evidence of insider trading that Ben had discovered. I also planted a few strategic items, printouts of personal emails that would raise questions about her judgment, evidence of her affair with Julian that would scandalize the more conservative partners, and copies of confidential client information that she shouldn't have had access to. Most importantly, I accessed the firm's internal email system and sent a series of anonymous messages to key partners, raising questions about Julian's ethics and Vanessa's qualifications for partnership. Nothing accusatory, just innocent-sounding inquiries that would plant seeds of doubt. By Sunday morning, I was back home, waiting for Vanessa to return from her conference. She arrived that evening looking relaxed and happy, with the kind of glow that comes from a weekend of good intimacy and expensive wine. She kissed my cheek absently and went upstairs to unpack, humming some song I didn't recognize. "How was the conference?" I asked when she came back downstairs. "Informative. Lots of good networking opportunities." She was already checking her phone, scrolling through messages. "How was your weekend?" "Quiet. Worked on the Chevelle, watched some football, nothing exciting." "Hmm?" She wasn't really listening, too absorbed in whatever was on her screen. I watched her for a moment, this woman I'd loved for 8 years, this stranger who was systematically dismantling our life together. She had no idea that her world was about to collapse around her. "Vanessa," I said. "Yeah?" She didn't look up from her phone. "When you're ready to tell me about Julian Markham, I'll be ready to listen." That got her attention. She looked up sharply, her face suddenly pale. "What did you say?" "I said, when you're ready to tell me about your affair with Julian Markham, I'll be ready to listen." For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Then her lawyer training kicked in, and her expression became carefully neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. The question is whether you want to handle this like adults, or whether you want to keep lying until I'm forced to handle it for both of us." Vanessa set down her phone, her hands shaking slightly. "Eli, I know about the mountain resort. I know about the secret bank account. I know about the insider information Julian's been sharing with you. I know about all of it, Vanessa." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I actually knew versus how much I was bluffing. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "Long enough." "Are you going to divorce me?" "That depends on you." "What do you mean?" I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "I mean that you have a choice to make. You can end this affair, recommit to our marriage, and we can try to work through this together. Or you can continue down the path you're on, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering you options. Choose wisely." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. "This is insane. You can't just blackmail me into staying married to you." "I'm not blackmailing you. I'm giving you the opportunity to salvage your reputation and your career before I'm forced to protect my own interests." "What does that mean?" "It means that if you choose to continue this affair, if you choose to divorce me and humiliate me publicly, then I'll make sure Julian Markham's wife knows about his extracurricular activities. I'll make sure the partners at your firm know about the confidential information you've been accessing. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how you've been advancing your career." Vanessa stared at me in shock. "You wouldn't." "Try me." We stood there in our living room, two people who used to love each other, now circling like predators. The pretense was finally over. The war was finally out in the open. "I need time to think," Vanessa said finally. "You have until tomorrow night. After that, I start making phone calls." She nodded stiffly and walked toward the stairs. At the bottom step, she turned back. "You know, Eli, I never thought you had it in you." "Had what in me?" "This, the ability to be ruthless." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You taught me well." She went upstairs, and I heard the guest room door close behind her. I sat alone in our living room, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Power. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the confused, desperate husband trying to save a marriage that was already dead. I was a man with options, with leverage, with the ability to control the outcome of the situation. Vanessa thought she knew me, thought she understood what I was capable of. She thought I was just a simple mechanic who would roll over and accept whatever scraps she was willing to throw me. Tomorrow, she'd learn how wrong she was. The war had begun in earnest, and I intended to win. Vanessa's deadline came and went without a word. Tuesday morning, she left for work, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't given her an ultimatum that could destroy her career. She kissed my cheek at the door, told me she'd be working late again, and drove away in her sedan like it was just another normal day. That afternoon, I made my first phone call. Patricia Chen's office. This is Eli Rourke. I'd like to schedule an appointment with Ms. Chen as soon as possible. Regarding? Divorce proceedings. I need to file immediately. I can get you in Thursday morning. Will that work? Perfect. My second call was to Dean, Vanessa's brother-in-law. I'd gotten his direct number from Claire, who was still worried about the rumors I'd planted about Vanessa's affair. Dean, it's Eli Rourke. We need to talk. Eli? What about? About Julian Markham and my wife. I think you know more than you let on at Tom's barbecue, and I think it's time we had an honest conversation. There was a long pause. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean that you've known about their affair for months, and you've been enjoying watching me twist in the wind. But the game's over now, Dean. I know everything, and I'm prepared to go public with it. Go public with what? With the affair, with Julian's history of sleeping with employees, with the financial irregularities at the firm, all of it. Another pause, longer this time. What do you want, Eli? I want you to call your friend Julian and tell him that his little secret isn't secret anymore. I want you to tell him that he has 24 hours to end his relationship with my wife and transfer her to a different department, or I start making very public accusations about his professional conduct. You can't prove any of this. Can't I? Dean, I used to disarm bombs for a living. Do you really think I can't handle one cheating lawyer and his accomplices? The threat hung in the air between us. Dean was quiet for so long I thought he might have hung up. I'll make the call, he said finally. I thought you might. Wednesday evening, Vanessa came home early for the first time in months. She found me in the den, reading a book and sipping whiskey like I didn't have a care in the world. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. Julian says you've been making threats. Julian says a lot of things, most of them lies. Eli, this has gone far enough. You can't blackmail people into doing what you want. I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm simply ensuring that everyone has access to the same information I do. Transparency, Vanessa. Isn't that what lawyers are supposed to believe in? She stared at me for a long moment. What happened to you? You used to be a good man. I used to be a naive man. There's a difference. So what now? You destroy Julian's career and mine out of spite? That's up to you. End the affair, commit to fixing our marriage, and none of this has to come out. Continue down your current path, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing. Vanessa shook her head. You can't force someone to love you, Eli. No, but I can make sure they pay the appropriate price for betraying me. She stood up, pacing to the window. And if I choose Julian? If I choose to leave you anyway? Then you'll do it with nothing. No job, no reputation, no future at any respectable law firm. You'll start over from scratch, just like I'll have to. You're destroying both our lives out of pride. I'm protecting my interests. You taught me that, remember? You taught me that sentiment is weakness, that only results matter. Vanessa turned to face me, and for the first time in months, I saw real emotion in her eyes. Not love, that was long gone, but something like respect. I underestimated you, she said. Yes, you did. So did Julian. Yes, he did. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, What if I end it with Julian but still want a divorce? What if I can't love you anymore, but I'm willing to end the affair? I considered the question. Then we divorce like civilized adults. Fair division of assets, no public humiliation, no destroyed careers, clean and simple. And if I choose Julian? Then you get nothing and he gets destroyed. Your choice. Vanessa nodded slowly. I need time to think. You have until Friday. And then? And then I start making phone calls. Thursday morning, I met with Patricia Chen to file divorce papers. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with the kind of direct manner that comes from handling messy divorces for 20 years. Your wife doesn't know you're filing? She asked, reviewing the documents I'd brought. Not yet, but she will soon. And you're sure you want to proceed? Once we file, there's no going back. I'm sure. What about the evidence you've gathered? The affair, the financial irregularities? I'll use it if I have to, but I'm hoping it won't come to that. Patricia studied me carefully. Mr. Rourke, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've learned to read people pretty well. You're not the typical betrayed husband. What do you mean? Most men in your situation are either devastated or furious. You seem calculating. Is that a problem? Not for me, but be careful. Revenge can be satisfying in the short term, but it has a way of consuming people. Don't let the desire to hurt your wife destroy your own future. I nodded, but her warning came too late. I'd already decided that if Vanessa wanted to play hardball, I'd show her what hardball really looked like. Friday evening, Vanessa made her choice. She came home with 2 suitcases and a resignation letter from the law firm. I'm leaving, she said simply. I'm moving in with Julian, and I'm taking a job with a firm in Chicago. We'll be gone by the end of the month. I set down my beer and looked at her. You're sure about this? I'm sure. Even knowing what it's going to cost you? Even knowing, I nodded. Then you've made your choice. What does that mean? It means that by Monday morning, everyone in this city will know exactly what kind of people you and Julian Markham really are. Vanessa's face went pale. Eli, please, don't do this. You did this. I'm just finishing it. She stared at me for a long moment, then picked up her suitcases and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. I did love you once, she said. I know. That's what makes this so satisfying. She left, and I never saw her again. Monday morning, I made good on my promise. I called the senior partners at Markham & Associates and provided them with detailed evidence of Julian's affairs and financial irregularities. I called the State Bar Association and filed formal ethics complaints against both Julian and Vanessa. I called the clients whose confidential information had been compromised and informed them of the security breach. By Tuesday, Julian Markham had been suspended pending investigation. By Wednesday, he'd been fired. By Thursday, he was facing potential criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Vanessa never made it to Chicago. Her new job offer was rescinded when her prospective employers learned about the ethics investigation. She was unemployed, unemployable, and facing potential disbarment. 3 weeks later, Ben showed me a news article from a small-town newspaper in Ohio. Vanessa had taken a job as a paralegal at a 2-person law firm that specialized in traffic tickets and small claims court. The woman who'd once negotiated million-dollar contracts was now filing paperwork for $50 an hour. Feel better? Ben asked. I considered the question. Did I feel better? Vanessa's life was ruined, Julian's career was over, and I'd proven that underestimating me was a costly mistake. But did it make me feel better? Yeah, I said finally. I do. What now? Now I move on. Sell the house, maybe relocate the shop, start fresh somewhere new. Any regrets? I thought about that for a long moment. Did I regret destroying the woman I'd once loved? Did I regret ending 2 careers and ruining multiple lives? No, I said. No regrets. 6 months later, I was living in a different city, running a new shop, dating a woman who appreciated what I had to offer instead of focusing on what I lacked. I'd kept my promise to myself. I'd made Vanessa pay for every humiliation, every dismissive comment, every time she'd made me feel small and worthless. The last I heard, she was still in Ohio, still working as a paralegal, still paying the price for underestimating the man she'd married. Julian Markham had declared bankruptcy and moved back in with his elderly mother. Sometimes people ask me if I think I went too far, if I should have just walked away and started over without destroying their lives in the process. I tell them the same thing I told Ben that day in the shop. No regrets. Vanessa taught me that sentiment is weakness, that only results matter, that nice guys finish last. She taught me those lessons through months of humiliation and betrayal, through lies and manipulation and calculated cruelty. I was simply a very good student.